Hey guys, how you doing? Fedora Friday number 15. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hopefully you guys missed me. I feel like my hair is like a mess or whatever, but hopefully you guys can indulge me. But yeah, wow. What a like last several weeks, right? I mean, it feels like I've been traveling nonstop, but I haven't. I've only gone to two places, but it just feels like that, I'm just not like I'm not used to doing a kind of a couple leg trips like that. And again, I couldn't even tell you how much space there was between the two trips, but I had a good time on both of them. You guys that kind of follow me on Facebook and on Instagram, you guys can probably bear witness to the great time that I had. But definitely wanted to give a shout out to Paul and to Ian for showing me such a great time. Man, we had a blast, and then subsequently, I went out to dinner with Ian, and that was also a blast. Well, so thank you both for showing me such a great time. I really, really enjoyed London. It was one of those things where I didn't know what to expect. I kind of knew to expect kind of like a big city vibe, right? Like a New York vibe. And I did get the New York vibe. I totally got a New York vibe from London, except it wasn't like modern day New York. I got like an old New York vibe from London. And folks have asked me that, and they wanted to kind of know a little bit more about why. And I think it had to do with the shops, right? So obviously Ian, Paul, and myself did a tour of some of the hat shops. But in walking through the city with them as well as on my own, I got a real appreciation for the fact that the mom and pop shop is still alive and kicking in London. Whereas in New York, it just seems like everything is kind of like gone really corporate, right? A lot of private equity has bought up a lot of businesses. So there are still mom and pop shops in New York. It's just they're so few and far between when compared to some place like London, or at least in that kind of Soho area where I kind of spent the most time. It just seemed that there were a lot more of those mom and pop shops still there, and it made me feel good, right? The one example besides the hat shops, right? Was the record stores. There were record stores, and that's something that I don't know for you guys that are in the States and how your area is, but around here you just don't have many record stores left. At least not, yeah, at least not the ones that seemed like the mom and pop shops that I saw in London. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of a different flavor. They still exist. It just seemed a lot more spread out. Whereas when I was walking through London, I saw a lot more of that, and it made me feel good, right? It made you feel good. Again, even though I'm not somebody that listens to like vinyl, right? I'm not a vinyl record connoisseur. I just like the fact that that stuff exists in London. And again, that was just completely my perception. I could be completely way off. Maybe there's just as many record shops in New York City in the DC area than there are in London. But in walking through, it just gave me a bigger appreciation of the difference. So yeah, London was a blast. We had a really good time. And yeah, back to the grind. Hopefully this week away hasn't been too tough on anybody. I think it's good. You know what I mean? I think it's good for myself to take a little bit of a step back, as well as maybe you guys that are regulars on my channel. Only because, like I said, sometimes, again, it's not because I don't appreciate being together. It's just that sometimes when you have a little bit of time apart, you can kind of reflect on what's important, and then come back with kind of like charged batteries, right? I don't know. Maybe that's just completely me. But that's how I felt. I felt energized. I felt ready to kind of tackle, just a lot of things, right? I mean, I got a lot of plans, but before I go into 2026, I got to close out 2025. So I want to do that, in the best way possible. So yeah, it's been a lot of activity, but a lot of good activity as well. And I'm looking forward to 2026. I got to be honest. It's just 2025 has been a year of a lot of different things. Obviously moving and all that good stuff. But yeah, I think 2026 is going to be full with a lot more blessings and a lot more goals, right? a little bit more concrete goals, and maybe, in a future stream, I'll share that. I actually wanted to I pitched that to my inner circle to see if we wanted to do a kind of end of year recap, right? An end of year recap video where all of us get together and kind of talk about our 2025s, and then if we, whatever we're comfortable sharing, right? In terms of like things that were great, maybe things that were not so great, right? And what we're looking forward to in particular for 2026, either with goals or just life in general, right? Hats, careers, school, and life in general. So yeah, I'm still like working through that. Actually, this is a good reminder to kind of rekindle that question with the group, because I like to do it at least before New Year's. That way, it's like a true, end of year recap. So let's see, we do have a Tuesday slot on the 30th. So assuming everybody's available, right? And some people are traveling, to spend time with loved ones for the new year, to bring out the new year. And that's okay. If it doesn't work out, maybe the Tuesday before that, or again, we could just do a general hat chat anytime, right? It could even be the 31st if we really wanted to, but we'll kind of just coordinate and see how we're, how it aligns. So look, hopefully that'll happen. If it doesn't, it's okay. Like I said, it's just an idea. It wasn't my idea, but when I heard it, I was like, wow, that's got legs. You know what I mean? So, I want to just, throw that out there. So whoever's out there that watches this, see what you think, right? See what you think about that idea. Let it marinate, and then let's come through. And, obviously I'll be prepared. If we end up doing that, I'll try to be prepared. And that way, even if nobody else is prepared, I can talk about my situation, and then you guys can kind of react, and well, maybe that'll spur ideas in terms of what you want. Maybe some of the goals I got, you have as well, right? So you never know. That's why it's always good to share these things, because sometimes it kind of gives you ideas. So yeah, it's been a tremendous week, a very tiring week. It's gonna be like I said, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be that way all the way through the end of the year, because it's just a lot of like administrative stuff to do, and just to kind of get 2026 ready on the right foot. So hopefully you guys keep rocking with me. It's really going to be very exciting to do this. Oh, I just remembered that I didn't share the link with my inner circle. Let me do that. Forgot to do that. See, I'm out of practice, guys. So I was wondering why nobody was going to be here, but I'm just going to let them know that I am live. I am live. And here is a link if you want to join me on screen. There you go. See, I'm a creature of habit. So usually I have kind of a routine, and part of my routine is sharing the link out with my inner circle. That way they can join me on screen. But again, I didn't do it today, you see, because I'm out of practice. It's been only a week and I'm already out of practice, So hopefully my, somebody from my inner circle will want to join. If they don't, that's okay. I'll be prepared to do the show solo. I was like, I didn't share this movie with my inner circle or anybody, basically. Honestly, when I was first thinking, hey, my man Josh, how's it going, Josh? Sorry about that. I was just apologizing because I totally forgot. It's only been a week since I've been doing these, since I stopped doing the live stream, the pause, right? The London pause. But I already forgot that I was supposed to share that link out with you guys so that you guys can join me. But, I did it now. Everybody has the link. So we'll see if people trickle in. But I was just talking about the movie for today, Josh. The movie today is Krush Groove. And originally, I didn't even know what I was going to choose. I had a conversation with Morgan. Thanks, Josh. I had a conversation with Morgan, and I kind of hinted that I was going to do the movie Fresh. And I really want to do that movie, but that might not be a good hat movie, right? I mean, it's a good movie, and I'm not opposed to doing a non-hat movie. But maybe that's something that I'll pitch to my brother to see if he wants to do a pyramid stream on that. Shout out to my brother Sammy, by the way. You know, it's kind of been a little bit since we've done a stream. I'm gonna kick that back up hopefully pretty soon on my Mets channel or sports channel, right? As well as on this hat channel, right? The pyramid stream can still go on. You know, he's kind of a big movie buff just like me, but he's not necessarily a hat movie buff. So I feel like it's a perfect segue to talk maybe about a movie like Fresh or any other movie that we both or either both or one of us have an interest in, and then kind of can bring the other one in right into the fold, right? That's nice about having a fellow movie buff like Ian. Ian's a fellow movie buff, and there's so many movies that he recommended and music that kind of I would have never ever known about had he not suggested, right? Or maybe I would have known about it, but much later on. So it's it's nice to have a network, right? So so the movie of the day is gonna be Krush Groove. Again, this is an iconic movie, right? This kind of tugs at my heartstrings because for somebody like myself, right, a kid from Brooklyn that grew up a big fan of hip hop music, of rap music, however you choose to want to call it, right? I mean, I know that's kind of even itself a controversial distinction, right? And I kind of go off of like the traditional view that hip hop is a culture and rap just happens to be an aspect of the hip hop culture, right? In addition to things like DJing, graffiti, and style, right? There's the aspect of all those, and obviously dancing, break dancing traditionally, right? So all those are aspects of the overall hip hop culture. So rap is just one element of the hip hop culture. But this movie kind of captures a lot of those elements as well. Maybe not as much graffiti, but there's movies for that, and I'll cover those in the future, right? There's graffiti movies out there too. You got Beat Street, then you got Wild Style. So if you're a fan of those movies, stay tuned. Eventually, I will get to them. They're not necessarily hat movies, but maybe I'll cover them in a pyramid stream or some other format, right? Or maybe I'll just break the Fedora Friday like hat movie format, and I'll just do it because I wanna, right? If you guys indulge me, then I'll do it, right? I mean, why not? Rules are made to be broken. So yeah, I don't even know. Like, this is one of those like movies that I'm like, man, I should have prepared way better. But I always say that. I kind of say that with a lot of movies, and then I find myself, you know what? Sometimes you just got to do it, right? Do it, and then there's nothing stopping me from talking about it again later on, right? And to say, oh, on that note, this. So you guys know the format. I'm gonna go right into some photos, right? A lot of them some of them will have, I don't know. There'll be hat photos and non-hat photos, but it just kind of capture a flavor of what it was like, right? In an urban environment at the time, right? Again, to put myself in the place of when this movie was released, I got to be like around third grade, right? So I'm a youngin, I got a couple older brothers that were part of the culture, right? In various aspects, but myself, I was just watching these rap guys, right? Do it, right? And I'm watching, besides the rap guys, I'm watching guys in every neighborhood. I just want to kind of give you a flavor of like the influence of my style, because I talked about this probably piecemeal, but you guys, as you guys know, I talked about like the old men in the neighborhood, that being an aspect of why I love the stingy brim, right? We talked about Rocky, right? And how Rocky influenced me, right? Like this probably the fact that I want to wear this thin chain with some sort of emblem in here that means something to me. I take that as something watching Rocky, right? Growing up, right? So shout out to Stallone for that. And I'm a big fan of Stallone. I know a lot of people aren't, but like I got that element as well. But then there's Run-DMC and just like the hip hop culture in general, right? Like the look, I get that a lot. It's like, hey, you kind of have that Run-DMC look going. I'm like, yeah, it's like, yes, and today, just FYI, I got my Borsalino velour. I think of this as kind of like probably between that and my Knox Tom and Jerry, but probably even more so this one reminds me of that that Run-DMC look, right? It's a very versatile hat, like in terms of, right, you guys know about the Borsalino and how easily it can be molded. So for a while there, I had it with the two front dents. For today, I got rid of the front dents to make it a little bit more Run-DMC style. And it's funny because you can see this rope, right? I've covered this hat before. I've dedicated videos well, a video to covering photos of this hat. So you guys can catch that in the archives, so you can see the hat in greater detail with photos. But in watching the movie, you can see that Jam Master Jay, right, the DJ for Run-DMC, he had a rope. So who knows? Maybe he had a Borsalino that he was wearing. That's something that maybe that somebody like Kevin Gerber could answer, right? So shout out to Kevin. Kevin, I know that Run-DMC was a client over at JJ's, and maybe you can provide a little bit more nuance in terms of like what hats each of the members favored, right? Because I'm really curious as to whether Jam Master Jay, the DJ, aka Jason Mizell, the late Jason Mizell, because he's passed away, whether he had a Borsalino, because it just looks like one. It looks like a Borsalino, and it looks like one that had the same kind of a rope band. So yeah, shout out to Kevin if you're watching this. If you're not watching this, maybe somebody knows Kevin and you can shoot him a message, or maybe I will. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm not opposed to just saying, hey, what's the answer to this question? Anyway, back to the movie. So yeah, just to couch this, I'm kind of in third grade when this movie was released. I'm hearing Run-DMC all the time because it's what's coming out of my probably my two older brothers' their radios, right? My oldest brother's already driving at the time. My youngest brother's not necessarily driving my oldest brother's driving. He's in his 20s, his early 20s. And then my next in line brother, right? I don't know. He's old, my older brother, but not the oldest, he's involved in the hip hop culture through breakdancing in particular, right? But he's not driving. So they're all both listening to music, right? One's listening out of his car. The other one's probably listening out of a boombox, maybe dancing, right? But Run-DMC is playing and I'm listening to this, right? And I'm like, wow, those guys sound cool. You know what I mean? If my older brothers who are definitely cool are listening to these guys and like them, then obviously, that's what I should be listening to. So that's how I'm like listening to all of this, right? And there are other characters at the time, other rappers that I'm listening to, but it's mostly through my brother's music, right? I didn't own any records at the time, right? At least not any records that were like significant like that, right? Third grade, right? Anyhow, let me start with some stills here and kind of give you just the flavor, right? I mean, I'll start off with the movie cover, and you can already see here, right, headwear, right? Because I mean, besides fedoras, what we're really talking about with this movie is just straight headwear, and you could see right here, right? Obviously, you got all right, and then we talked about like being loose with the idea of headwear, right? Hair is technically headwear, right? When you style your hair a certain way, it's technically headwear, right? So right, starting from the left, you got the guy with his arms crossed with the white leather jacket, kind of a smooth Billy D. Williams looking guy, is Curtis Blow. Curtis Blow is a very, very well-established rapper at the time. He's kind of like the moral compass, probably. Yeah, I think he's one of the primary moral compass of like the hip hop group, of the hip hop characters in this movie, right? There are others, but he's the guy in the culture that is like the moral compass. He's kind of like the dad playing dad, right? Or big brother. And then obviously you had the three guys there that are dressed very similarly with the fedoras, right? That's Run-DMC. Starting from the left, you got Run. In the middle, you got Jam Master Jay, who's always rocking the b-boy stance, right, with the arms crossed. And then right I guess our right, his left would be DMC, right? Daryl McDaniel. So you got Joe Simmons on the left, who's Run. You got Jason Mizell, who's Jam Master Jay, and then you have Daryl McDaniels, aka DMC. That's where DMC comes from. It's basically a play on his first and last name. D for Daryl, MC for McDaniels. All right, and then going back, working our way to the right, we got the Fat Boys, and everybody kind of knows the Fat Boys, right? If you don't know them, I mean, I think two of them now are passed away. You got Prince Marky D, you got Cool Rock Ski. You got Prince Marky D on the left with the kind of raccoon hat. Also in the raccoon hat, you have Buff Love, aka the Human Beatbox. And then on the right, with the Kangol kind of flat cap, you have Cool Rock Ski. All right, so you can see already headwear there. all straight through. And then right to kind of clean up the finish up with the image, you got on the left, you got Blair Underwood, who plays Russell Walker. And Russell Walker is basically just, they just decided it was really supposed to be, it's based on Russell Simmons. But for some reason, they decided not to go with Russell Simmons' real name. They just gave this character the name Russell Walker. And then just to complete it, we obviously have a female lead. The female lead here is played by artist Sheila E. And you can see the head, right? So if the characters aren't wearing hats, they got some kind of unique hairstyle, right, to differentiate themselves. And you can see the outfit that Sheila E. has, right? It's straight Prince. And there's a big reason for that. It's like obviously Sheila E. and Prince had a connection. And I don't think it was an accident that Sheila E. made it into this movie. Just like a lot of other artists, I don't think it was an accident. Again, I don't have the basis to tell you whether it was true or not, or why they were in the movie, but you kind of looking at that, if you're knowing the music that was playing, at least the urban music that was playing at the time, you know very well why Sheila E. is there, and other folks that we'll get to in a little bit. So yeah, that covers the cover, and then obviously, you know, right up front in the early on in the movie, you're seeing kind of like you're seeing youth, right? You're seeing youth dancing and playing this loud music, right? They're spinning on their heads, even while working, right? These guys are working at a car wash, right? And everybody's just like, they know that society in general is like viewing them weird, right? They're aware, but they're still rocking to the music and they're still enjoying their culture, right? Their own hip hop culture. And my favorite part was the gentleman that they work for that comes out right next, right? That's basically how society reacts to them. It's like, get that stupid noise off and go back to work. And everybody's like, when, right? It's kind of like old people, right? That's basically the response for this youth, you know. And I thought it was really well done. It was a little cheesy, but I thought it was really well done. And the gentleman just happens to have a flat cap on, right? He kind of represents society in general and how they're. This is the feedback that society is giving these kids. It's like, stop that stupid thing you're doing. You're never going to amount to anything. You know, just get back to work, right? Get a real job. You know, stop with the stupid music. And in the midst of all of this is the title character, right? So Russell Walker is based on Russell Simmons, and Russell Simmons is basically the major like character, right? Like, this is the focal point of this, right? He started Def Jam, right? A very, very iconic record label that branched out. Like, he branched out into clothing, I think with was it Fat Farm? I believe it was Fat Farm. He did Def Comedy Jam, which was a huge success. This guy's an entrepreneur, and he's a mover and shaker. And this movie is really probably his brainchild to kind of celebrate where he's at in 1985, right? He's kind of like, this is the I made it movie. Like, not only did I make it, right? This is the movie that is to, like, there's more to come. I'm not done yet, right? There's so much more to come. It was really interesting. Like, again, that's how I viewed this movie. If I'm looking at it from the lens of Russell Simmons, I got to think that was one of the major purposes. Like, this is kind of to celebrate, but also to jumpstart, the next big thing that we're going to launch for music. So yeah, obviously Russell Simmons is a huge iconic figure in the hip hop community, right? In many ways, I think he still is, but more so like historically, right? Maybe you don't see him that much anymore. Obviously, he's a lot older now, but this movie really is very iconic. And, you know, he just happens to be wearing some headwear here. This is not like this kind of looks like a fisherman cap to me. But I thought it was interesting, right, to see all this headwear being donned in urban environments, right? So we talked about how like the decline of headwear, right, in the U.S., but in urban environments like I grew up in, headwear was still being used, right? And it was used with a purpose, right? It wasn't an accident. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Obviously, we talked about the fact that Russell Simmons chose not to play himself in this movie, right? He was in the movie. I think he played a manager, a music manager or theater manager at one of the venues. I think it was at the Fever, but he did not play the title character, who was based on his life, right? This was played by probably the most serious actor in this, which is Blair Underwood. And Blair Underwood is just like one of those everybody's seen Blair Underwood in some movie, right? He's like, and I think without knowing for sure, I want to say Blair Underwood also was an actor in soap operas. He just has that look. He has that leading soap opera man, male figure look, right? Which was interesting, right? Because I got to think, based on his resume, somebody like Russell Simmons probably saw Blair Underwood and it's kind of like, you're gonna play me? You don't look hip hop, right? Like he's got the hat backwards here. He's got this thing, but he kind of looks more like Carlton, right? From the Fresh Prince than a hip hop guy. But then you see this photo, and you're like, okay, all right, you got me, right? He's basically got the uniform on, right? He's got the backwards, probably Kangol hat there. He's got the Adidas tracksuit, and now he looks the part, right? And that's in hip hop, right? Back in the 80s. The important thing was to look the part, right? The idea is I'm going to look the part and then I'm going to become the part, right? Because I look the part. Is a very interesting psychological kind of process, right? So yeah, when I see this photo, I'm like, yeah, that's a guy that fits in right into that music world at the time, right? Kangol, right? What a brand. Kangol is, and one day maybe I'll bring in Steve Heck, because Steve Heck seems to know a lot about Kangol, the brand, way more than I'll ever know, and if I had a little bit more foresight, I would have done a little bit more research into Kangol for you guys, but I didn't. So I apologize for that, but it's just everybody knows, anybody that grew up in urban environments like I did, knew why Kangol was such an important part of like the uniform, right? The street uniform, as well as the hip hop uniform, right? And obviously there's some overlap there. You want to watch another movie, and I'm sure I'll cover it at some point, would be New Jack City. They also have some interesting, like the use of the Kangol, right? I mean, they recognized the importance of Kangol, and it lasted a lot. It lasted a long time, the importance of Kangol. I don't think it ever really went out of style, to be honest, right? It was the heyday in the 80s and maybe the 90s, the early 90s, but it never really went out of style. I think B.I.G., right? Notorious B.I.G. wore it in Flavor in Your Ear. He wore a Kangol hat, right? So it never really went out of style, right? It definitely had a peak at some point, which I can't remember right now when that would be because I didn't do that research, but it never really went out of style. Samuel L. Jackson still wore a Kangol hat well into the 2000s, and it looks sharp, right? It was like a felt flat cap, right? Well, what's not to like? So that's why it was an interesting choice for Blair Underwood. I think he was just trying to give the movie, like the choice to have him probably just gave the movie more credibility. Like he's a serious actor. Anyhow, getting back to Russell in the movie, he's partnered, right? He's running a music label, right? I believe that the label is called Krush Groove, right? Right. It's not called Def Jam in the movie, but it's called Krush Groove. Which is the name of the movie. And he's partnered with his white friend, very obviously white friend, who's also part of the culture, but is maybe giving him a little bit of credibility. You can see them partnering here and trying to go into trying to smooth talk their way into getting a loan that they need to be able to press more records, to be able to meet supply, right? And like they're coming in here knowing that they're going to get laughed out the room. And sure enough, they do, right? Like they get asked for their books. They show their shoddy little notebook full of just basically gibberish. And the bank law officer basically says there's no way they can get a loan, right? So you can see rejection here, right? So you remember how society was rejecting these youth. Even the people that were trying to running the business were being rejected based on the type of music. They were asked right away, what type of music? And then Rick Rubin goes, rap, and they were like, what? He's like, rap music. And he's like, what's rap music? And he's like, oh, well, we can show you. And then they go into like a whole rap, which obviously just doesn't help their case at all, with this bank loan officer. So you can see once they get rejected, they start just getting angry, right? And anger is like a big part of this movie, right? It's kind of like a lot of this music is based on anger of like not being taken seriously by society. So you can see their faces, right? You know, they go from like, you know, doing the fake smile and trying to like schmooze the Bengal to like giving them this, like, you know, the ice grill, right? Anybody in urban environments knows about the ice grill. So yeah, they get the ice grill. So you can see here like a lot of the issues that they're dealing with, right? It's reflective, right? The issues that these two businessmen that are running this record label are not unlike the issues that are being dealt with by the actual artists that they're trying to promote, right? So it just makes perfect sense, right? It's like, yeah, you're angry. We love this music because like we're angry too. We're trying to like, we can't get anybody to take us seriously either because of this type of music, and we love this music. We love this culture. So yeah, I thought it was really well done. Again, the acting is not great, right? Besides maybe Blair Underwood, like there's some decent performances, but it's not like you're not going to find De Niro level or Al Pacino level performances in this movie, right? It's not like that. They didn't have that kind of budget. You know, we had a lot of cameos, a lot of like artists that were doing roles here, and you have to kind of like tone down your expectations of the level of acting that you're going to hear. I mean, you're going to witness here. So, but yeah, but the music I think really holds it up very well, and just the idea, right? The intention behind this, I think, makes it a real iconic movie. And then you can see, right after they get, you know, there, you at some point you see early on, you know, Rick and Russell working with you know, on the music, and then you can see to the right hand they got Curtis Blow. Curtis Blow is basically one of their already established artists, right? I can't tell you a whole lot about Curtis Blow other than he was already established at this time. He was like, you know what I mean? But he was the smooth guy, right? He was the guy that was more maybe corporate friendly. Right? He wasn't the intimidating, like, I'm going to bust down your door, you know, and like, take me seriously because I'm an angry guy, right? He was like the smooth Billy D. Williams type of rapper, right? And they really portray him well, I think, his image in the hip hop community very well. And a lot of other rappers were like that, right? They weren't there to like make you scared of them. They wanted to be accepted as entertainers and as like ladies' men and like the smooth guy, right? Kind of like a James Bond type of kind of guy. I always say Billy D. Williams because I think Billy D. Williams really represented that, like that smooth, debonair kind of guy, right? And Curtis Blow was a guy of that ilk, right? But he was already established. But now Rick and Russell want to make more of like, they want to promote more of these edgy artists, right? Guys that are a little bit more angry, got a little bit more fire. And, you know, one of these groups is RUN-DMC, and you got RUN-DMC here in the booth, right? They're working with them right there, you know, and it's interesting early in the movie, they're in the booth, right? I think this might be the same scene. So right before this, you know, Russell's, you know, queuing in and saying, hey guys, all right, let's be serious now, right? And then Run immediately, right? He's angry, right? You can tell how angry. He's like, what do you mean we're not serious, right? And they're both wearing the fedora hats, right? They're both wearing their fedora hats in the booth right before the scene, and they remove their hats. Like, what do you mean we're not serious? You know what I mean? I love that. I thought that was a really I thought that line was fantastic because it really captures everything we've talked about up to this point. Was these guys just want to be taken seriously, and you know how I feel about the fedoras, right? The fedora was definitely part of that look, right? It's kind of like, we're young, right? We're obviously, you know, we're two young black men doing music that a lot of people don't like, and they don't even know what it is. It just sounds like noise to them. Let's go and wear these hats because at least maybe these hats will buy us some credibility. It might get us in the door, right? You know, like, all right, well, I don't know who these guys are. They're wearing leather, but they got these, you know, these nice felt fedora hats. Let's give them a chance. You know what I mean? But when they got angry, they just took off the fedora. They're like, you know, which is a very common thing you would see, right? Back in the old neighborhood, when somebody, like, you know, they're about to go throw down, they'll start taking off their chain, they'll start taking off, right? And getting ready to throw down. So I thought that was like, it felt real to me, you know? So shout out to Run, because again, he's RUN-DMC, they're not actors, right? But I thought Run handled himself well in front of the camera. DMC, maybe not as well, but if you know a little bit about DMC and his kind of his personality, you kind of see why. He's a guy that really dealt with straight stage fright really from the get-go, right? A lot of times he didn't want to perform, right? He wanted to make the record with his buddy Run, but he didn't want to go out and do the performance because he was scared. And that's how kind of he dipped into alcoholism, because the alcohol was really what he needed to kind of get in front and be in front of a big crowd. So I think a lot of artists could relate to that, to be honest. At least I felt like they can. Right. Obviously, a lot of artists deal with drugs and other habits, was drugs, alcohol, and obviously all the other vices that are involved in that life in the entertainment industry. DMC had those demons as well. So I think that also probably took away from his ability to be charismatic, in Krush Groove. But Run, I thought, was plenty charismatic. I mean, he is the charisma base of Run-DMC, right? I think he's obviously the leader, or at least the personality, right? The guy that's obviously the star quality, right? Everybody else is a star as well, but Run is kind of like that face. And that's something that Russell obviously recognizes as well, right? So this movie mirrors pretty much the real life, right? You got essentially Russell Simmons, right? And you got Joe Simmons, right? Two brothers, right? And both in showbiz. And the brother, right? There's a dynamic here of wanting to get out of your brother's shadow, right? So, in essence, Russell is a guy that everybody takes seriously. Run, Joe Simmons, his younger brother, wants to be taken seriously as well, but he's kind of torn, right? He knows that he should be following his brother's advice, and his brother has his best interest in heart, but at the same time, he knows that he's not going to get taken as serious if he doesn't try to, get out of that shadow. So it's a very interesting dynamic here that I think it's really underappreciated about Krush Groove, is that this older brother, younger brother dynamic that is playing out here. And I'm sure that is that actually happened, meaning that's based on real life in terms of the dynamic. I just don't know that for a fact. So you guys that know Russell Simmons and Joe Simmons and have seen interviews about them talking about their relationship, maybe you guys can kind of speak a little bit more to that. But I just put myself in their place. I've always been pretty much a younger brother to basically all my siblings except for one. So I'm the second youngest. But so I know a lot about that, older brother, younger brother dynamic, especially on the side of Run. Right, Run is the younger one, and then he's got a very much established older brother who he knows he needs to kind of make it, but at the same time he knows he feels like he has to escape so that he can show everybody that he did it by himself, right, on his own. He didn't do it because of his brother. I thought that was an interesting dynamic, and like I said, it has to be real, because it's I don't think they spent a whole lot of time on scripting here. You know what I mean? They had to kind of base a lot of this on just what really happened. So that gets us to Run-DMC, right? I mean, obviously, look at these guys, right? They look like stars, right? I don't even know if I heard that anywhere in particular, but they look like stars, right? They got you got the DMC with the glasses, right? I mean, you can see, right, myself wearing the glasses, right? But those fedoras and the tracksuit, and then obviously you got the Adidas sneakers with the laces. Right. Well, not the laces, because at some point fat laces were really big. But Run-DMC, I think, more so had no laces, right? So you saw that in Walk This Way when they're walking down the steps, with the Aerosmith video. They don't have laces. They just got the tongue hanging out, right? So it's a very, very they're there to stand out, but also look badass, right? But the fedora really cleans up everything. For me, the fedora on Run-DMC is what hit, as the Big Lebowski would say, tied everything together, it tied the room together, right? It tied the look together, So they had the leather outfits, the Adidas tracksuit and the Adidas shoes, as well as the jeans by Lee, right? But the fedora, and again, the fedora is something where you don't see what kind of fedoras they're wearing. That's something that hopefully Kevin one day will opine a little bit on. I think he has, but I don't remember what he opined on. So that's something, if we ever get Kevin on here, wherever I go onto Kevin's channel, I can ask him directly about Run-DMC. If I forget, you guys can remind me. So yeah, so you can see here, right? These guys, they walk into the room. You got DMC already in the B-boy stance. He's sitting down, but he's in the B-boy stance with his arms crossed, right? They mean business. And And you can see, right, the crowd loves them. So here you can see this black and white photo, right? This is kind of like the standard kind of Run-DMC concert, right? The crowd loves them. They're kind of in the uniform with you got the all leather outfit, you got the white sneakers, right? And then you got the fedoras on top. It's just an iconic look. You have all that black, right? And then the white of the sneakers just really make everything pop. It's just an awesome look, awesome look. And it's the epitome of cool. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to look cool, something like this is definitely going to make it happen. You can see there, right? They're talking business, right? You can see the fedoras, right? These guys, I mean, this is basically, honestly, like another, like, these guys might as well be the Blues Brothers, right? Like, remember we talked about the Blues Brothers a few weeks ago. These guys are just like, they have that chemistry, right? Like, they just go well together, and obviously Run is the one doing the talking. DMC is just sitting there giving that blank, that stone face stare that he has with his arms crossed. It's kind of like, don't mess with us. You know what I mean? It's just a good look. And then again, the fedora hats just really look sharp. And I got to tell you, another reason why, like, this looks like a velour fedora. Like, it looks like it could be a Borsalino. Again, that would be something I have to run by Kevin, but it looks like a Borsalino velour to me, to be honest. And that's what I'm wearing right now. You guys tell me if it has like a similar look. I'm just looking at the felt, and it has that sheen, right? Not the same kind of sheen that we saw on the Rio Ector velour that Steve Heck showed us, but just that sheen that you get when the light hits a fedora, like a velour fedora. So interesting, right? So you can see here, right? Just with everybody, they were like business first. They're like, hey, we're no suckers, right? We're no suckers. But then they go in there, right, to visit dad, right? They're going to go visit dad. I love this scene because it really reminds me of just a lot of things. So you can see they walking in, their dad's a minister. They're walking in to kind of talk to him, right? And they're wearing their fedoras. They're coming in dressed like business, right? Like they would. And then dad, the minister, is looking at him like incredulous, right? This is actually their real dad, meaning Russell and Joe Simmons' real dad. I believe his name is Daniel Simmons. So they had him play the minister and play the actual dad in the movie. And I thought he did very well for himself as well. Very charismatic. Looks a lot like, both, obviously you could tell the resemblance between the brothers and their dad. But he was like, what are you doing? Get those stupid hats off. You're in the church of God. You know what I mean? I thought that was really awesome it just a scene that hit home, and you kind of know they had to have been something that actually happened. And, and the boys went, and obviously they're like, all right, okay. It's like, they're the guys that, they try to tell everybody what to do, but they know they're not going to go and outrank dad. Right. So they're like taking off the hats, and then you see here in transition, taking off the hats. And then eventually they get here and their hats are off. And now it's almost like they become powerless, right? We had that similar situation happen. I forget when, but I know I've covered it, where somebody has to takes their hat off, and almost they lose a little bit of their aura, right? Their power, their mystique. So I thought it was really interesting, this set of photographs where you're seeing that transformation of like badassery to like, we're just two young kids. We're just two young punks, right? Like, you know what I mean? And maybe not young punks. Maybe it's not that. Maybe that's a little much. I did a little too much there. But we're just two young guys trying to appear like we know more and we have more than we actually have. But we're ambitious, right? So obviously they came here asking for money, and they were roundly rejected because they were like, "What do you want money for? For music? To develop in our music." And he's like, that's not music, right? And you see that? So they're getting it from general society. Even their parents are telling them, what you're doing is not even music. Like, I don't know what to call that. It's just noise, right? So you see, they're getting all this messaging, and no wonder their music is so angry, right? Because nobody wants to take them seriously, even though they're trying their best to kind of, play the role, right? And look the part. Society's telling them you're not serious because your music is not serious. It's not even music. And they're getting this all around, and they're channeling that into their music. And you can see here, right, that look that Run-DMC had with the leather, like that was something that was still in transition, right? When Krush Groove was made, you know, Run-DMC were already big stars, right? They were already on MTV with Rockbox, right? I think they got on MTV in 1984 with Rockbox. So this is like 1985 already. They're already well known in getting regular airplay. That's a great video, by the way. Rockbox is the first rap video to appear on MTV, and I thought it did really well for them to kind of introduce them to, like, you know. And just a little factoid in terms of rock and roll, right? That interesting that they were visiting a rock and roll museum in that video, and kind of like getting laughed at by the curator, right? The little old man, you know, laughing that they don't belong there. Yeah, I think Run-DMC is the second group after Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five to actually get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and that's definitely a testament to the iconic status of Run-DMC, you know, in music in general, not just hip hop, in music in general, that they were inducted. This is only the second group to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So you can see here, like, the mix of hats, right? This is probably a photo that maybe was taken around Krush Groove, maybe before Krush Groove. I don't know. I couldn't tell you that. But it shows you that they were still playing around with their look. This look right here is more of like a street look, right? So they weren't wearing the same thing. This is kind of like the roundabout look where they're getting up in the morning. They're not going to do a show. Maybe they wear the same shirt, right? They all have shirts that say Run-DMC, but they're just wearing their own regular clothes, right? What's okay in the street. So you got Run wearing the fedora, right? So that tells me that in terms of the style choices, the fedora idea for Run-DMC was Run's idea, either Run or maybe a combination of Run and Russell Simmons, his older brother. So, you know, and then you got the, you know, the kind of, I don't even know, it kind of almost looks like a Jamaican style hat, right? That, you know, it almost like a blown up version of a flat cap, right? Which I think was very popular. You know, they grew up in Hollis, Queens. Hollis, Queens definitely has a lot of Jamaicans. I don't remember if Jason Mizell is somebody that has Jamaican ancestry, but I know a lot of folks from that area, right? 50 Cent, you know, comes to mind, that have Jamaican backgrounds, right? And, you know, shout out to Queens, to Hollis, and to Jamaica, and all the Jamaicans, especially the Jamaicans and Haitians in that area. I went to school in that area. Really, really good memories. And then with DMC, he's got the bucket hat, right? The iconic bucket hat. And this one kind of looks like it's an Adidas bucket hat. But, you know, everybody, I don't think I saw a lot more Adidas bucket hats. I saw more Kangol bucket hats during this time. But I can't help but notice that that's an Adidas logo. So, you know, as you know, they actually had made a song called My Adidas. They were very, very loyal, right? They had the Adidas tracksuits earlier on. They were very loyal to Adidas, the brand, as well as to Lee for their jeans. And then obviously they had their, you know, Kangol and, you know, the shades, right? I think it was the Gazelle shades. I don't know. We called I didn't know the name was either Gazelles or Gazelles. But if you grew up back then in that urban environment, you kind of knew exactly what I was talking about, you know, and you wanted to just wear those shades. Even if you didn't need to wear glasses, you wore those shades because they looked iconic and people loved the fashion of them. So yeah, so this is just kind of showing you that their look was still morphing. They weren't like solidified in their look, but a lot of you saw where they eventually went to after Krush Groove came out, and they kind of settled on that leather jacket, kind of all black outfit, white sneakers, and then the kind of fedora look. And I think they're velour. I'm pretty sure they're velour. Until I hear otherwise, they are velour fedoras. You can just see photos here just of various performances. You can see Russell always in the mix. Again, he's the face of the label, and this causes tension with his younger brother. Just to show you how much music there was. By this time, King of Rock probably was the most recent big hit that Run-DMC came out with. I think they came out with that song probably 9 months before this movie came out. And it was iconic, right? It was kind of like, we're here, like we're taking over. That was the theme of King of Rock. I'm the king of rock. There is none higher. Sucker MCs should call me sire. To burn my kingdom, you must use fire. I won't stop rocking till I retire. Anyway, that was no Run DMC quality rap, but that is how that song opens. And it's just a very, very potent song. And they actually call it out in the movie because the Fat Boys, which we'll get to earlier, are listening on their boombox. They're listening to King of Rock and reciting it word for word. And they were citing those exact lines because it's kind of like that punch in the face, right? It's that angry music, like we're coming and we're going to bust through the door. And it's like, it left an impression, right? It was like a lot of the music that was the rap music that was coming out prior to that, a lot of it was more like Curtis Blow, very smooth, very ladies oriented, dancing music. This was kind of like that precursor to maybe gangster rap, right? And Run DMC was like, all right, we look the role and we're going to come in by force, and their music was just reflected. It just had that energy. So really powerful stuff. So you can see here, obviously, a lot of dynamics playing right here. You got a rival record music producer that's trying to sign Run, right? He knows that Run is the key to getting the group behind, right? To get it to sign, right? He's Run DMC is not technically signed to Krush Groove. So this music producer is just trying to woo, right? He's basically telling him, hey, your brother's not going to take you anywhere. Right, I can take you to the big boys. I can get you that real money. Your brother's just holding you back. So you can see here, right? Like Run is being manipulated, that's stuff that I'm sure actually happens in the industry, right? You have these music producers that are trying to separate you from your current management so that they can go and steal you and make their money off of you. Just some more iconic photos here. You can see here, right, that B-boy stands. Again, these guys just look like they could be guys on the street, right? Like they were just, they had streetwear down. Eventually, they settled on their uniform, but you can see that those fedoras just were a big part. And then here in this photo, also a very street look is the big gold. We called it the big Dookie rope chain, right? I forget how thick these things tend to be, but they were ginormous, right? I never really was a huge fan. They just seemed like an albatross to kind of carry around your neck. I have no idea how heavy these things were. They just looked heavy. I'm like, I don't know if I would like to, at third grade, I'm not going to be carrying, there's no way my mom is going to allow me to wear a chain like that because we couldn't afford it in a way to begin with. Plus, I'd be scared to get robbed. But this was the look that these rappers were sporting, as well as the drug dealers on the street, right? The ones that were making money on the street, they were also wearing these because they wanted to look like the rappers did, right? And vice versa, right? The rappers were looking like the drug dealers. It was like an iterative thing. So it was just a signaling to say, hey, I got it made, right? I got it covered, right? I'm a badass. More photos here, kind of like just them in the street, right? Like the idea is these guys are from the street. They just happen to make some music. So you can see some of these photos. All right. Now, though Run DMC at this time were already like, they were still ascending, but they were already like it guys. They had just become the it guys. The movie also wanted to have elements of the future. So they really covered the Fat Boys in a good amount, to a good extent, right? The idea is that let's showcase these guys because these guys are represent some of that next big thing. It was really smartly done, I thought, because these guys come across as really charismatic. They're basically just like urban Three Stooges. And they actually came out with another movie called The Disorderlies, which is very much kind of like an urban version of the Three Stooges. And you can see headwear is definitely part of their look. They're wearing their sneakers very much like Run DMC. They got the Adidas tracksuits, and they have hats. They don't have fedoras, but they have hats. And then obviously they're called the Fat Boys. At this point, they're called the Disco Three, right? They don't become the Fat Boys until later on in the movie because, well, they're dealing with that issue, right? They want to become good stars. They want to get the girls. They want to get the money. They want to get the respect, just like Run DMC did. But on top of that, they also are really they're obese, right? They're big guys. So they're dealing with the self-esteem issues, right? And sometimes they're fighting with each other. They're like having arguments about whether or not they can make it, right? So they kind of have to talk each other into being able to like say, hey, yes, we can do this. They have the talent. They know that they're talented, but they're worried about not being accepted because they're just really big guys, right? So it's a really interesting kind of, it just makes you want to root for them throughout the movie, and you do root for them, So, but yeah, it's just the headwear, and they actually provide a lot of comic relief too. It was like the music that they cut in the high school, kind of like serenading some girl. They also cut a music, kind of cut a song in a all-you-can-eat restaurant where they're cleaning everybody up, essentially proclaiming their love of food and admitting that hey, they love to eat. It's like, I mean, something that would be obvious, but they're like, they're ballsy, right? They're like, I don't care, I'm fat and I like to eat, right? So they had the all-you-can-eat song. It's really, it was really funny. And you can see here, like I mentioned, they have these arguments within each other because, again, they have self-esteem issues, and they're trying to resolve them while at the same time trying to be supportive of their bandmates. Like, they want to do it. They know they have the skill, but they know how they look. So they're really self-conscious about that, and they get into fights, right, about whether or not they should be going and trying even. So I thought it was really interesting. You can see again the caps here from a different angle. So you saw the raccoon hat on Prince Marky D. And then here you have Buff Love, the guy on the right with the yellow shirt. He's got kind of like a leather motorcycle cap on, and obviously the Kangol, the red Kangol felt hat on Cool Rock Ski. And it looks like that kind of looks like a members only jacket, to be honest. I'm not sure, I'm not positive, but it kind of looks like that. But it has kind of like these kind of hooks on them. I thought it was really interesting. I don't know if anybody knows what that jacket actually is. You can let me know. But obviously they're in Brooklyn right here. This is definitely Brooklyn. You can see the iconic brownstones of Brooklyn here in the background. So I just thought it was really cool. And then obviously Buff Love, the big guy, he's the biggest one, in terms of weight, and also probably the most talented one, right? He's the human beatbox, and that's showcased very well in the movie as well. But he's obviously got the gazelle shades there they're like studded. I don't know if that's diamond studded, but they're definitely like studded out with something. I'm assuming they're diamonds, but I doubt they're real. They don't have that kind of cash. But again, they're trying to look like stars before they're stars, right? You see that theme throughout, right? Of Hat in the Hat movies that we've covered. When somebody's trying to ascend and they're trying to portray an image before they actually get there, they'll wear that hat, right? Once they get there, they may or may not choose to keep wearing a hat. Right? They don't need the hat has served its purpose. So sometimes, like The Godfather, that you will see them hatless because they don't need the help anymore. So yeah, I thought it was interesting that this movie follows along those lines in terms of watching these guys that are ascending using the hat to the same effect. And you can see here, these guys are a crew, right? Like they are boys. They're just guys that like to hang out with each other and then do music. So they're always together. They're like the Three Stooges, right? It's just really fun to watch them, right? Like anybody that's grown up in these kind of neighborhoods in Brooklyn or in Queens or anything knows that they always have like, and I referred to it before, a little crew, just guys that were your best buds or your guys that you hung out with that looked after you. That way nobody beat you up, You can see here photos of them performing. Again, they look the part. They're just really big. And they know it, right? They know how they look. But despite that, they're gonna forget about that, right? Their self-consciousness, and they're gonna go out there and perform because that's what they really want to do, right? They want to become big stars. Let's see here. This is a nice little black and white photo. Again, this all happens at a place called The Fever. The Fever, basically during the late 70s and from the late 70s to let's just say the mid 70s to the mid 80s was like the hip hop, like the venue for hip hop music, right? I mean, eventually it closed down after some, probably, I think it was right after this movie or right during the end of the filming of this movie when it turns out that somebody had uncovered that they were operating illegally, right? With no permit for that whole decade, It's like, wow. They operated for like almost 10 years with no permit or no nothing. And eventually, once they got uncovered, they weren't able to get granted a permit, so that they just closed down. So this movie, in many ways, marked the end of an iconic venue called Disco Fever. So that was a very, very interesting factoid around the movie. And Buff Love. I mean, I have to kind of call out Buff Love here because, well, I mean, he is just a character, right? Like, you know, even amongst the three characters, the Fat Boys, he stands out because one, he's just very charismatic, right? He would be the Run of the Fat Boys, right? Like of Run-DMC. If Run was the face of that group, it would be Buff Love because he just had all the talent, he had the charisma, he just had that it, you know. So shout out to Buff Love, rest in peace. But it shows him like ironing, you know, and just getting ready for the day, and it's just funny watching him getting prepared. You know, all of them actually, because they have a video of all of them getting prepared, and they're just food is part of everything, right? You can see a big pizza box here as he's getting ready to go out. All right, enough of the Fat Boys. We have Curtis Blow. We talked a little bit about Curtis Blow. You can see his look, right? He's got the Jerry curl, right? This guy's just a good-looking guy, right? And he represents that smooth, that old school kind of hip hop that they're trying to they're kind of transitioning kind of away from with the label Krush Groove, right? Even though they really like Curtis Blow and he's still great, right? He's kind of more like the dad figure. He's trying to help these angry rappers that are trying to get in the door to actually do that, to succeed. And he's already made it because he's got the winning smile. He's a ladies' man, right? He does radio-friendly music, right? And but they really need him to kind of help these young guys that they don't have that same kind of sound, and they don't want to sound like Curtis Blow. They want that powerful like sound that Run-DMC has been pushing. So he's there. He's kind of like that older brother. And maybe not dad, but older brother that's just trying to just help out. So you can see here, right? Like this guy is just a smooth guy, right? You can see him rapping here and performing, just a smooth ladies' man guy. He wears a top hat earlier here, and you can see here, right? It's like he starts off with his leather jacket and top hat. So for you guys that like the top hats, you get a little bit of that in here too, right? It's just synonymous with like the showbiz, right? Putting on the Ritz, right? So it made sense that it would appear here on a performance. But yeah, Curtis Blow. Same kind of scene, just a little bit, little cut off with the top hat, but you can see very glittery, kind of like vaudeville kind of look here that he's doing. Again, very, very friendly, right? So he's made it, right? He opened the door for a lot of these angry rappers because he was a little bit more radio friendly, a little bit more palatable. He had the winning smile, right? He kind of like he was corporate, right? He was corporate friendly. And that's the kind of the messaging that they're playing on here with Curtis Blow. You see here again, just big old smile. You know, Curtis Blow was pretty good. I mean, I really liked his music. But again, it was accessible. You can see here he's judging the rap contest, and he's basically kind of like, you know, he's trying to be empathetic, right? Because he knows that only one person can win. And then he's kind of like looking at this like, you know, it's like looking at the losers, right? And trying to console them. He's just very empathetic in this movie. I really do I think Curtis Blow did a great job. Here he's kind of consoling Russell, right? After Russell finds out that his brother signed with the competing label, with the big boys. Curtis goes to console him, and then Russell's just angry, right? Like he's legitimately angry. He's like angry, like, you know, a lot of the rappers that he's basically trying to sign and promote. And then Curtis, like a good big brother, is trying to console him and tell him, you know, and he's like, what? And Russell's telling him, why don't you just go sign with them too? And Curtis is like, because I wouldn't do that to you, you know. But these other guys, they're younger, right? They don't have my maturity, you know. So you have to kind of give them some slack. They're being thrown more money than they ever seen. So Curtis is just like, hey, don't be angry. Let's just fix this, and then move forward. So Curtis Blow. And then we have the female lead, which is played by Sheila E. And this is just again, I'm not as I don't know as much about Sheila E.'s career. I do know that she was linked with Prince, right? She comes across as a very, very Prince-like artist in this movie, and I don't think it's an accident, because I think they wanted to kind of present like the juxtaposition, right? Like Sheila E. is making music that's a little bit more accessible for the urban audience, right? So Prince was more accessible, right? Prince had the guitar, right? He was a little bit more radio friendly, and I think Sheila E. really represented that as well, right? And I think her hair was really wild, and like it was really cool, right? It was something where, you know, she was a little bit angry because, well, she wasn't making angry music, but she would happen to be a woman in a male dominated industry, and she's trying to break in and get serious, you know, be taken serious. I think that's her kind of like contribution in terms of like, yeah, so I can empathize with you guys, but for a different reason, right? I'm also kind of like a little angry at the system, but for different reasons, because I'm a woman and I can't be taken seriously by this male dominant industry. So right, it's like I don't sleep around. I don't want to do that to get to the top, but it seems like that's the only way people expect me to be able to get my music heard. So it's really cool. She forms a bond with Russell, obviously, and then, you know, she becomes kind of like another reason for why Russell and Run fall out, because they both fall for her, right? She's very charismatic, she's very beautiful, right? She has this look and a big confidence about herself and what she's trying to do, and they're attracted to that, you know, for good reason. But yeah, you can see here like a lot of the poses that she does. This is like, she's like a female Prince, right? That's essentially what she's you know, kind of her image in the movie. And I think it works really well. Like she does it without necessarily coming across as like, you know, being a direct copy, right? Like she has this kind of style, and you can kind of, it's believable for why these two guys fall for her, you know? And I think that's a really good thing about the movie. Again, I just see this and I just keep thinking Prince. Here you can see Russell and Sheila giving each other the eyes, right? Like obviously they're falling for each other. All right. Enough on Sheila E. This is an interesting aspect here of, you know, remember this movie is also like, hey, we made it, right? So we're not done yet, but we made it. And this is kind of an interesting scene here, right? Because it's kind of like, yeah, we spent all this time being evaluated. Now we're at the point where we are the evaluators, right? So you can see here, Run-DMC, right? They're made it at this point. Now they're going to go be the ones scoping out other talent along with Rick and the rest of the staff. So this is the year where they're auditioning new talent for the record label. And you can see, right, DMC always has that look, right? It's kind of like all business. But interestingly is that Jam Master Jay is really the muscle of this outfit, you know, and they're auditioning for, and this is an iconic scene, because they auditioned this female R&B singer, and they're really impressed with her. They leave her out, and they're done for the day. But right before they close the door, LL Cool J shows up. They don't know who this kid is. He's 17 years old or whatever. And he's like, "Who are you?" And they just like bum rush the audition, and they're like, "Yo, we're closed. Like we're done." And like you can see Jam Master Jay like reaching, like if he was gonna grab his gun, and they were like, "Yo, wait a minute, no, leave him alone." This is actually interesting, because LL Cool J, I believe at this point, was signed to Def Jam, but he wasn't invited to be in this movie. He wasn't invited. He basically just showed up and just started like performing at every single angle, like essentially doing what the movie role, what he ended up doing in the role itself. So it was really, really interesting that they chose to capture that. So it shows you that they were really using a lot of real life events, even ones that just like were occurring in real time. So LL Cool J was like relentless, you know, which, you know, you can see, you guys heard me talk about like LL Cool J, how important he was, you know, in terms of the culture, into the music, the hip hop music scene at that point, and then beyond. But yeah, this was his iconic look, right? He had the chain, he had that stance, right? This is a guy that's already like, this is 17-year-old LL Cool J. He's still muscle bound, right? at 17, and he's got the iconic bucket hat, right? That's LL Cool J's early look. He always had a bucket hat on, usually a Kangol one. And he always had that attitude, right? So he's got his two guys. One of them's carrying his boombox, and then he rolls into he's like, I'm gonna perform with you no matter what. He's like, you could like try to walk, but I'm gonna follow you and perform for you. So he goes into like his iconic song, "I Can't Live Without My Radio." It's just an iconic, like LL Cool J steals I think this movie with this scene. It just shows you, right? He's got I think this is a La Tiger shirt. Just remember some of these iconic brands. But yeah, early LL Cool J. And I just love the story that he basically kind of this is what he was doing throughout the movie. He was just kind of like imposing his will, and like trying to, like, he knew this movie was being made, and he's like, I'm going to be in this movie. Like somehow, some way, I'm going to show up enough, and I'm going to be enough of a thorn in the side of the movie producers that I'm going to get on this. I'm going to be in this movie. And he did, right? He willed his way into the movie. And I love this scene. I love this scene. And I love that song because it's really, again, representing, right? We talked about the Fat Boys trying to emerge. LL Cool J was also trying to emerge, and he was a leader of that kind of that angry sound, that like, hey, I'm a little dangerous, I'm a little angry, you know what I mean? And he shows it in this scene. Like, it's really well done by LL. I know LL Cool J went on to do some acting, a decent amount of acting afterwards, but I think this scene was so raw and so real. Like, it wasn't really an act, right? We know he was doing this. There's a little more some more photos of LL Cool J, right, with the iconic Kangol hats, right? You got the one on the left in purple, right, and then on the right he's got one in red, and then obviously the big Dookie rope chain, gold chain. Iconic person, like musician, let alone rapper, right? Just really important for the culture for a variety of reasons, right? I mean, besides the Queens, besides the it's just the everything, the total package. Like, this guy looked like he looked the part. This guy was, LL Cool J was 50 Cent before 50 Cent came out. And you can ask 50 Cent don't ask him, because you might not be able to get hold of him. But in interviews, 50 Cent patterned himself, right, his image and his look after LL Cool J, because he was kind of like a guy that had the look. He looked like an athlete. He had the ladies, and he had that edge, right? That like, hey, this guy's a little dangerous, right? Be careful with this guy. It was just really, really iconic rapper. Yeah, that was just another photo. I got that one out of sequence. And then just to kind of round out, like, just some of the other folks that we saw in here, right? And all done with a purpose, right? So you got the Beastie Boys made an appearance, right? Beastie Boys were one of those like guys that were, right? These were this was a white group, right? I'm trying to remember if the Beastie Boys were all Jewish or just some of them were Jewish. But doesn't matter. Like, society were like, these are the white boys that rap, right? And they made an appearance in the movie. That was iconic. You can see here a photo of the Beastie Boys and Russell Simmons, as well as Rick Rubin. So you got the Beastie Boys here, Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons, right? These guys were accepted, right? The Beastie Boys were white, but they were widely accepted by both audiences, the MTV audience, as well as that kind of that tougher, edgier urban audience that was like demanding edgy music, because they had that kind of yelling in your face kind of sound, that even though their content was a little bit more playful probably, but they at least screamed at you, right? And I think a lot of people appreciated that. So a lot of folks that don't even like rap music, they're like, well, the Beastie Boys are okay. Right? I hear that so many times. And then you had New Edition. You had New Edition in this movie, right? And obviously New Edition was like a precursor to Boys to Men. They were like, in the 80s, they were like a throwback to Motown, right? That Motown sound, right? Eventually led to, besides Boys to Men, you had Belle Biv DeVoe, right? And then you obviously had Bobby Brown, and Ralph Tresvant, or Tresvant. Forget how to say his name, but I think he was the lead singer. He had like a silky voice, man. Wow, what a voice. So yeah, iconic group. I used to love New Edition. I still do love the music, Just iconic music. And they were representing, right, besides Prince, they had a different sound, a different type of way, and that was very accessible, right? It was very accessible to audiences that way because it wasn't angry. Like, we heard this music before, right? We heard this Motown sound before. You have a bunch of young guys that are dressed in flashy outfits. They're dancing, right? This is accessible, and they wanted to portray that in this movie. And then I'm gonna close out with one more photo because this, wow, this blew my mind because I did not know up until recently that this gentleman was in this movie. But you had Chris Rock, a very young Chris Rock, making an uncredited appearance in Krush Groove. Look at Chris Rock and his hair. Now, Chris Rock is from Brooklyn, so it doesn't really surprise me that he would end up in Krush Groove. But it's just one of those things. I'm like, look how young he is. Wow, this is like, I don't know if we've seen Chris Rock any younger appear in any kind of like showbiz or whatnot, or film, any kind of a piece of video or whatnot. But yeah, look at Chris Rock. Wow. I mean, Chris Rock has always been kind of a smaller guy, like smaller frame guy, but this is just downright skeletal. And look at his face. He's got, like, talk about fresh face, man. Chris Rock. And then, you know, you got things like the movie Breakin'. You got Jean-Claude Van Damme had a cameo in Breakin'. I'll cover that movie at some point. But yeah, so that was the movie Krush Groove. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. There were a lot of hats. This was an iconic movie for myself, right? So like now that you know, like, some of the influences, hopefully you can kind of appreciate how Luke came to be in terms of like his look. So yeah, so RUN-DMC, Rocky, and then some of the guys in the neighborhood. You know, I think that probably covers a lot of how I got to my look right now. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that. You know, I apologize if I didn't do a little bit more digging into some of the stuff about Kangol, the brand history. But maybe I'll do that in a future video, or maybe I'll get Steve to come on and talk a little bit more about Kangol. To do that, shout out to you, Steve. Looking forward to having you back on the channel, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this. You know, this is my first video back, so hopefully I wasn't too out of practice, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Just a reminder, right? Just a reminder that we're still marching on our way to 100. I'm still planning to give away this Knox custom fedora, right? You know, it's got some moth bites, but I will, you know, it hasn't, right? It's been a while and it still has the same number of bites. So I think we're good on that front. And hopefully it can be repaired, right? Maybe with a little refurbishment, it'll make somebody a good fedora, maybe a good first fedora, a good 100th fedora, or maybe a good first fedora for you to restore. Either way, once I hit 100 subscribers, I will do a video on that hat, and then I will randomly select somebody that posts a comment on that video to win the hat. And again, if you don't want it and you want to send it to somebody, we can work that out. I might just ask you to cover shipping, only because I have kind of a little bit more of an international audience. Just FYI, we work it out, right? So support the channel, but even if you don't support the channel, right? You know where I'm getting at. Even if you don't support this channel, all right? Which one thing you got to do. Otherwise, I'll get LL Cool J to come out there and, you know, rock your bells, right? You know, it's not to do anything else other than to, like, you know, maybe do a bum rush and do a performance for you, you know. But otherwise, just to do one more thing, right? And that's stay adding, my friend. Have a great day. Ciao, everybody. Ciao.